Our mind can subtly deceive us and divert us from the paths we have carefully planned. Consider the following scenario. You decide to adopt a healthier lifestyle by setting clear goals such as starting to exercise regularly and improving your diet. At first, motivation is high, but inexplicably, you begin to postpone your gym visits. You promise yourself that you'll start next Monday, but when the day finally comes, a feeling of tiredness or discouragement arises without explanation, and you end up giving up. This example illustrates how we often create clear and detailed plans but are surprised by behaviors that lead us away from our goals. We make decisions that seem illogical, face unexpected mental blocks, and in some cases even develop physical symptoms like headaches or fatigue that seem to arise to stop us from continuing. The feeling of self-sabotage can be extremely frustrating, leaving us perplexed as we realize we are not achieving what we deeply desire. But why does this happen? Why do we sometimes destroy our own plans without any apparent reason? The renowned Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung dedicated much of his career to exploring the unconscious and reached fascinating conclusions about this phenomenon. He identified a part of our psyche that he called the shadow. Jung described the shadow as a psychological space within the unconscious where we store the unwanted aspects of our personality. In this dark place, where the light of consciousness doesn't reach, we hide characteristics of ourselves that we consider unacceptable. This can happen for various reasons. Perhaps our parents didn't approve of those traits, or maybe they didn't fit into social norms. Life may also have taught us that these aspects cause us pain or discomfort. So we repress these parts, pushing them into the depths of our psyche as if they were not truly part of who we are. However, as Jung warns, this repression does not solve the problem. On the contrary, it can generate undesirable consequences. The aspects we reject within ourselves take on a life of their own and begin to act in the shadows, outside our conscious control, subtly yet powerfully influencing our decisions and actions. This is where self-sabotage truly manifests. The repressed parts of our personality begin to rebel against our conscious mind, emerging from the depths of the shadow. The result is an internal battle where we often don't even know what or who we're fighting against. Fortunately, Carl Jung offers us a solution. Instead of repressing what's in the shadow, he suggests we integrate these aspects into our conscious personality. This process is only possible when we bring the unconscious into the light, when we make the hidden contents conscious. As Jung states in Psychological Types, consciousness is easily influenced by the unconscious, which often harbors deeper truths and greater wisdom than conscious thought. One of the great misconceptions about the shadow is the belief that it only represents the negative side of our personality. Because the shadow can generate internal conflict, many associate it with negative impulses, symbolizing it as a threatening figure acting in the shadows beyond our conscious perception. However, the shadow is much more complex than that. It represents a dark space in our psyche where we lock away personality traits we're not yet ready to face or reintegrate, whether due to trauma, unmet needs, or other reasons. When we talk about working with the shadow and integrating it, we're not suggesting integrating the shadow itself, but the repressed contents it holds. These contents are the parts of our personality hidden in that dark space. Just as we can retrieve objects from a dark closet and bring them into the light, we can also bring those aspects of our personality into consciousness, allowing them to stop being shadowy. Therefore, there is nothing inherently negative in these aspects. The problem arises when operating outside of our awareness, they begin to cause problems due to the disconnection. It's essential to understand that when these parts of the personality are repressed, we're not just dealing with isolated traits. As Jung explains, unconscious motives often prevail over our conscious decisions, especially in critical matters. These fragments of personality, separated from consciousness, are often called shadow aspects. They behave like small personalities, each representing a part of who we are, because they are, in fact, fragments of our identity. When these little personalities are separated from consciousness and relegated to the dark closet of the shadow, they become autonomous, independent from the ego, which is the part of ourselves we recognize as I. Just like our conscious personality has its own needs, desires, and goals, each one of these shadow aspects also carries its own motivations. And those motivations can conflict with the conscious goals we set for ourselves. By understanding and integrating these repressed aspects, we can begin to free ourselves from cycles of self-sabotage and move more consciously and fully towards self-knowledge. This path is essential for those seeking a deeper understanding of themselves and personal growth. When conscious desires clash with the intentions of shadow aspects, it can create inner turmoil and resistance that manifests as procrastination and self-sabotage, blocking progress toward desired change. Let's consider an example of how this kind of shadow-based self-sabotage can manifest in someone's life, frustrating their plans. Imagine a man who sees himself as a loner. His goal is to run a successful online business and live in a rural area where he can avoid constant interaction and depend less on others, something he believes he consciously desires. Although this self-sufficient lifestyle seems attainable, he repeatedly sabotages his own efforts. For instance, he may receive an offer to buy an isolated property at a reasonable price, but turns it down with a weak excuse. Or perhaps he has created a blog about rural living that attracted many followers with great financial potential, but suddenly decides to stop posting without a convincing reason. From a conscious perspective, his decisions seem illogical. He strongly identifies as someone who wants to live in isolation and has dreamed for years of being self-sufficient. So why does he sabotage himself when he's about to reach his goals? The answer may lie in a repressed part of his psyche, a shadow aspect acting independently and invisibly. This hidden side of his personality, though he is unaware of it, may harbor unresolved needs or fears that conflict with his conscious desires, causing him to undermine his own efforts without realizing it. This shadow may be rooted in a deep fear of total loneliness or an unconscious desire for validation that directly conflicts with the isolated life he consciously seeks. While his conscious mind yearns for absolute independence, this shadow, fearful of isolation, acts in the background, sabotaging any attempt to carry out his plans. So he continues to drift away from his goals, always finding logical justifications for his delays and shifts in direction. Until he confronts and integrates that repressed part of himself, whether it be fear of loneliness or a desire for connection, he will remain trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage, where his dreams always seem just out of reach, even when they are within his grasp. It's as if an unwanted guest were hiding deep in his soul, acting in the shadows and controlling him without him being fully aware. He feels something isn't right but can't identify the root of the problem because it lies beyond his conscious reach. Until he shines a light on these hidden aspects, they will continue to control him like an invisible puppeteer pulling the strings behind the scenes. Jungian Dr. Murray Stein stated that any autonomous complex not governed by the conscious will exert a possessive effect on consciousness, limiting its freedom in proportion to the strength of that complex. When these aspects take control, devastating consequences can arise. Inexplicable desires and emotions may suddenly emerge, weakening our willpower and conscious authority. They act like invisible saboteurs, influencing our behaviors and sometimes frustrating our efforts to achieve meaningful goals. For example, a person may become trapped in an unrelenting need for revenge over past wounds or fall into the deep abyss of nostalgia. This particular man who identifies as an isolationist may actually be manipulated by a repressed part of his psyche, the desire for human connection that he has rejected due to past emotional wounds. This unwanted aspect of his personality has become a shadow government, sabotaging his conscious actions toward living an isolated life, without him realizing that deep down he longs for companionship and human connection. This repressed side of his psyche plays a paradoxical game. On one hand, that shadow aspect wants to be integrated into his consciousness, It wants its motivations to be heard, its desires to be felt, and its needs to be met. So it sabotages the extreme individualism of the conscious personality, frustrating his efforts toward independence. On the other hand, the shadow aspect wants to remain hidden because its sovereignty is at risk if it is discovered. It will lose the power it exercises in the dark. And it is precisely this desire to remain hidden that motivates it to keep sabotaging the conscious mind. Understanding and integrating these aspects is essential to breaking the cycle of self-sabotage. As Jung emphasizes in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, a deeper understanding of oneself is crucial to overcoming these destructive patterns and achieving true personal growth. This might be the end of the video, but to me, it feels like the beginning of a great friendship. I want to thank you for staying with me until the end. It truly means a lot. I hope to see you in the next one, where we'll explore the mysteries of life and human nature together. Until then, take care, and see you next time.